So the NBA is back this week in a video that I like to make every single year before the season starts. 20 NBA players that could get traded in the upcoming regular season. Last year when I made this video, I talked about guys like Jimmy Butler, Zach LaVine, and Brandon Ingram. So it'll be interesting to see, looking back at this video at the end of the year, and see what moves end up happening and how many of these guys ended up getting traded. And if there's somebody that I mentioned in this video that you don't think is going to get traded, let me know why down below. And if there's somebody that I didn't mention in this video that you think will get traded, let me know down below. Drop a thumbs up if you guys do enjoy the content, and let's get into this. So the first one we're going to talk about feels like an obvious one, but I think could be an interesting storyline throughout the regular season. Jonathan Kuminga of the Golden State Warriors. We thought there was a chance he was going to get traded in the offseason. Could he go to the Pelicans, the Kings, the Suns, the Bulls? No, that doesn't happen. He signs a 1+1, but it's a fake 1+1 with the Golden State Warriors right before the restriction deadline, and he's going to be making around $22.5 million this season. Now, Jonathan Kuminga will be eligible to be traded in January. Who knows where the Golden State Warriors are at that point? Could they be the 2 seed, 4 seed? Could they be the 9th seed in the Western Conference? They do have the oldest starting lineup in the NBA. And I feel like Kuminga will be an interesting storyline to watch, because if he's playing good and builds up that trade value, why trade him? Why wouldn't you just want to keep him for the future, given how old your roster is right now? But if Kuminga is not playing well and the Warriors do want to trade him, who wants to acquire an asset that's not playing well in his current environment? And not only do you have to give up assets to get Kuminga and get to that matching $22.5 million, you also have to extend him after you trade for him as well. So I think this could go a couple ways this year. Maybe the Warriors do find a veteran that they can acquire at the deadline, and a young rebuilding team takes a flyer on Jonathan Kuminga. Or maybe this doesn't work out and Jonathan Kuminga enters unrestricted free agency next offseason, or he ends up getting moved next offseason rather than an in-season trade. Something I'm definitely going to be watching throughout the season. So we just recently saw the Sacramento Kings sign Russell Westbrook. Now I'm so happy that Russ is going to be on a team for the 2026 season. Did it have to be the Sacramento Kings though? They don't need another guard. They signed Dennis Schroeder this offseason. You have Zach LaVine as your starting shooting guard. You have Devin Carter, your first round pick from the 2024 draft. You have Keon Ellis, who we're going to be talking about here. Malik Monk, who I'm also going to bring up, and you can even classify Nick Clifford as a guard as well. But back to Keon Ellis, he could be such a good role player, a defender, a stopper that so many teams can use. Heck, the LA Lakers could definitely use somebody like Keon Ellis as a point of attack defender if Marcus Smart doesn't step up this year. I don't think the Kings and Lakers are making a trade though. But yeah, I do feel like with all these guards in Sacramento, Keon Ellis may get pushed to the bottom. They're going to emphasize Russ and Dennis Schroeder this year, as the Sacramento Kings are going to try to compete. They want to make the playoffs this year. And with the money they pay Dennis Schroeder, he's going to start with the veteran credibility that Russ has. He's going to play a ton of minutes. They're very high on Devin Carter. That means Keon Ellis may be the odd man out. And I think he could be an extreme buy low candidate this season. Ellis's playing time was sporadic last year. He started 28 games for the Sacramento Kings. He did play 80 in total, but Ellis could be a free agent at the end of the year. They just re-signed Keegan Murray. Like I said, I think he could be the odd man out, and I'd like to see a ton of teams that are competing for a title take a flyer on Ellis. And yeah, we're also going to talk about Malik Monk now. All offseason long, the Sacramento Kings were trying to trade away Malik Monk, most notably trying to trade him for Jonathan Kuminga. Maybe that's a trade that we see happen in January, but I also think Malik Monk could be on the move. And I wouldn't be surprised if one of Monk or Keon Ellis got moved before December. Now, Monk does have a decent amount of money left on his deal. He's making $18.7 million this year. $20 million in 2027, then has a $21 million player option in 2028. But Malik Monk is a good player. Last year, he was kind of thrown into a different role. They traded away De'Aaron Fox for Zach LaVine. They don't have a true point guard on the roster, so they went to Malik Monk for those duties, and it was tough for him to adjust to. But I think Malik Monk, as a on-ball scoring guard coming off the bench, is a great role for him. Somebody that I think should have won 6th Man of the Year in the 2024 season. That I also think Sacramento is going to try to trade this year to shed some money and open up more minutes in the backcourt. The Kings need some front court depth or just wing depth in general, so maybe they package Malik Monk and Keon Ellis this year. I wouldn't be surprised if one or both of these guys were moved, because I don't really know what Sacramento is doing with their guard rotation. Speaking of guards, let's talk about Coby White of the Chicago Bulls. The Bulls paid Josh Giddey this offseason. I hope they're all in on Matas Buzelis as the next franchise Bull. Coby White can be an unrestricted free agent in the 2026 offseason. Now, the Bulls can offer Coby more than any other team can give him, so that does give Chicago a little bit of leverage here. year. But do you really want to run the risk of Coby White entering unrestricted free agency next offseason when you probably could have got a nice haul for Coby White last year at the deadline or in the offseason? I think they could take advantage of a seller's market this season and get a nice return for Coby White. I'm just crossing my fingers that the Bulls actually enter into a proper rebuild. There is no point in being in the play-in tournament anymore, picking at the end of the lottery. It's just not going to be a recipe for success for the long term. So hopefully they move on from some of these veteran pieces this year. I know Coby White is still young. He's going to be 26 years old at the end of the year, but I do think it'd be wise for Chicago to put Coby White on the market. And I feel like a team that is looking for another microwave scorer, another great three-point shooter, could definitely give Chicago what they want for the former UNC guard. The next player I'm going to talk about is also a guard in the Eastern Conference, and it's going to be CJ McCollum of the Washington Wizards. McCollum is 34 years old. He's on an expiring contract. There's no point to have him here on the Washington Wizards, a team that may not even win 20 games this year. McCollum is still a good scoring guard in this league. He's averaged over 20 points per game every single year since 2016. Last year, he shot 37% from three for the Pelicans and took about 8 threes a night. He did play 56 games for probably the most injured team in the league in the 2025 season. Maybe it's more likely that CJ McCollum ends up getting bought out this year just because he's owed $30.6 million. Maybe there is a matching salary trade for them out there, and I would like to see them move on from McCollum, something they couldn't really do with Malcolm Brogdon because Brogdon was never really healthy in Washington. I think McCollum could still provide value to a contender. There's still plenty of bad contracts out there that you can match the salary, but we could also see teams that are like, you know what, we could just try to get CJ McCollum for free on the buyout market. Let's just do that, because if Washington does not trade McCollum by the deadline, no point on having him on the roster for the second half of the season. I mentioned before it could be a seller's market, and that's why Chicago could trade Coby White. I don't think Phoenix would want to trade away Dillon Brooks, but if it is a seller market, I think they have to. Phoenix has one of the worst draft capital situations in the NBA, and it's a tough Western Conference right now. I am not confident that the Phoenix Suns will be in the playoffs in 2026, let alone the play-in tournament, and Dillon Brooks can provide value to a team that is serious about competing for a title in the 2026 season. Brooks is going to be 30 years old in January, but he's as good of a 3-and-D option that you can get. Last year, he shot 39.7% from three for the Houston Rockets, 6 threes a night. He also averaged 14 points, and this is a guy that's going to give 100% effort every single night. He's going to try to get under your skin. He's going to be so annoying to play against, but you're going to love having him on your team. He's owed $21 million this year, $19.9 million next year, so I feel like Phoenix could look to part ways with Dillon Brooks if they can get a young player, maybe like Jonathan Kuminga, in return for him at the deadline. Those salaries do match up. I think the Charlotte Hornets are going to be a lot of fun to watch this season. They're going to score a lot of points, but they're going to give up a lot of points. I think they could test the market for Collin Sexton as well to see if they can get any draft capital in return for the 26-year-old guard who they picked up for Jusuf Nurkic in the offseason. Charlotte does have a lot of solid guards on their roster. LaMelo Ball obviously as the starter. They have Trey Mann in that backcourt with Con Knipple, who they just drafted, and Liam McNeely. You also have Spencer Dinwiddie as a veteran point guard. I feel like Collin Sexton will net a larger return than somebody like Dinwiddie. Sexton has been very impressive in preseason so far, and he's going to be a nice breath of fresh air for the Charlotte Hornets bench, which has been one of the worst units in the league. And Hornets fans are going to go from watching Nick Smith Jr. and KJ Simpson, no disrespect to those guys, but Collin Sexton is a way better player than those two right now. Sexton has averaged over 18 points per game each of the last 2 seasons for the Utah Jazz and has shot around 40% from three. He flies around on the defensive end of the floor. He's not the tallest guy out there, but he gives a ton of effort. I think he could be a valuable piece on the trade market this year if Charlotte doesn't want to commit long-term money to Collin Sexton, since they're paying a lot of money to LaMelo Ball. I talked about Jonathan Kuminga before, who was a 2021 draft pick that was in a standoff with his team in restricted free agency this summer. Another player that was in a similar position, Quentin Grimes of the Philadelphia 76ers. Quentin Grimes signed the qualifying offer with the Sixers. Therefore, he has a no trade clause. He can, choose where he wants to go if the Sixers were going to move him, and maybe the relationship soured in the offseason. Grimes is going to take advantage of being an unrestricted free agent next offseason, so Philly may as well cash in at the deadline if a team is willing to give up a valuable asset for Quentin Grimes, who really rebounded his value in the league last year with Dallas and with the 76ers, because he was a great Knick in 2023, both in the regular season and in the playoffs, a true 3-and-D guard that you can trust with the ball in his hands. Then he had such a setback in the 2024 season. He lost his confidence. He was banged up. Tibbs was misusing him. They traded him to Detroit at the deadline for Bojan Bogdanovic. He stunk it up in Detroit, could not shoot the basketball. Dallas got him for Tim Hardaway Jr. in the 2024 offseason. That trade feels like a win-win now in hindsight, and Quentin Grimes shot 39% from three over 47 games with with the Mavericks. They also shockingly traded Quentin Grimes after trading away Luka to Philadelphia, where he averaged 22 points and shot 37% from three. Now, he's not going to average 22 points this year with the roster that Philly should have fully healthy at one point. But if Philly's looking to have a long-term asset under control, they feel like they're going to lose Quentin Grimes for nothing in the offseason. They don't think that they're going to use Quentin Grimes for maybe a deep playoff run. They could trade him in February. And another player in a similar situation to Quentin Grimes, Cam Thomas, who also signed the qualifying offer with the Brooklyn Nets. He didn't get a long-term deal that he thought he was going to get from the Nets front office, so now he has a no trade clause. Now, Cam Thomas may just want to get his shots in Brooklyn this year. They're going to be a bad team. He's clearly the number 1 or the number 2 behind Michael Porter Jr., so maybe he would not waive his no trade clause to any team, get those stats up, cash in free agency next offseason. Or maybe he wants to prove to the rest of the NBA that he can be a contributor on a playoff team. Cam Thomas was on the Nets in 2022 and 2023 when they were in the playoffs, but he barely played for those two teams. So he could now prove to the rest of the NBA, you know what? I could be a good shooter in the playoffs. I could play team basketball, and that can reward him with a nice contract in 2026 free agency. The Nets would definitely want to get an asset for Cam Thomas back because they're going to let him walk for nothing next summer. They showed no signs of trying to re-sign him this summer, and he's going to be an unrestricted free agent. Therefore, he can leave for nothing. The Nets are going to get nothing in return. Therefore, they could look to trade him this year. I expect Thomas and Grimes to get moved at the deadline, which is going to spice things up this year. So I talked about before how the Kings were low-key trying to trade away Malik Monk all offseason. I feel like the Raptors were trying to do the same with RJ Barrett. We're seeing the floor spacing issues happen in preseason so far. Scotty Barnes has not had a good floor spacing preseason. You're seeing Brandon Ingram struggle at times with the lack of spacing. They just brought in Brandon Ingram. Scotty's their franchise player. They just re-signed Jakob Poeltl, and nobody's taking on that quickly contract right now. Therefore, I do feel like RJ Barrett could be the odd man out. This year, RJ Barrett is slated to make $27.7 million, then $29 million in 2027. And RJ Barrett is still a good player in this league. He's 25 years old. Now, I don't think he's as good as 21 points per game could show in the box score. There are some defensive issues. There are some ball stopping issues. And when you look at the volume of three-point shooting, sometimes you don't love the shots he's going to put up. But I do think he could still be a good player in this league, maybe for a little bit cheaper than what he's making right now. Maybe there is a trade for a Malik Monk out there, like was rumored in the offseason. Maybe he could get traded for somebody like Dillon Brooks or CJ McCollum or Jonathan Kuminga if the Warriors really liked RJ Barrett. So I do think he could be on the move this year if Toronto did make a noticeable trade. So I'm taking a risk putting him in this video. I'm going to talk about Tyler Herro of the Miami Heat. Now, currently, Tyler Herro is extension eligible from the Miami Heat. And the way the Heat and Pat Riley have operated in the past, they like to get their extensions done early. So I do expect Herro to sign an extension. But if he does not sign an extension, if the two parties are far apart on a deal, maybe that's why it hasn't happened yet. Herro could be on the market this year if the Heat are not as competitive as they think. Now, Herro would be at the top of the trade market by far, 25 years old. He's not only under contract this year at a tradable salary of $31 million, but he's under control next year for $33 million, which is well worth it for what Herro provides you right now. But not only do you have to give up assets to get Tyler Herro, you also have to extend him. Are you willing to give Tyler Herro $40+ million a year? That is a big ask. Last year, Herro had the best year of his career, played 77 games, was reliable in the regular season for the Heat. 24 points, shot 37% from three, 47% from the field. We've learned that he can't really be a number 1 in a playoff series, but I still think he could be a really good number 2 or number 3. He moves extremely well without the ball in his hands. And like I said, if they don't agree on extension, and maybe they would listen to Tyler Herro talks, he would be at the top of everybody's list at the 2026 deadline. But yeah, if he signs an extension, I'm dead wrong here, and you can ignore that. Now, a big wild card to get traded, Fred VanVleet of the Houston Rockets. Yeah, Fred VanVleet, who's going to be out for the whole year with an ACL tear. Now, Fred VanVleet signed a 1+1 with the Rockets in the offseason. He's making $25 million this year, $25 million next year with the player option. Now, this new contract he signed, he technically has a no trade clause as well. So this would have to take a little bit of Fred VanVleet helping the Rockets out here. But I wonder what would make the Rockets want to trade Fred VanVleet more? If they were really good and say they're a 1 seed or a 2 seed at the deadline and they're like, we could win it all this year, let's move Fred VanVleet and get somebody that can actually help us in our playoff run. Or are they the 6 or the 17 in the Western Conference and they're like, we need something here. We got to attach Fred VanVleet's $25 million to upgrade the backcourt. Rockets fans, you can let me know which option would be more likely that a Fred VanVleet trade can happen, but they can match a ton of salary. We talked about those guards. They can get Coby White, CJ McCollum, RJ Barrett. Probably don't want that. Malik Monk, Tyler Herro, and a couple other names we're going to talk about as well. And I feel like Fred VanVleet would be okay waiving his no trade clause. He could still opt into his $25 million next year and make his money. Another player they could trade Fred VanVleet for, Anfernee Simons of the Boston Celtics, who's had a great preseason so far. I'm excited to see Anfernee Simons with a green light in Boston and take as many threes in this Joe Mazzulla offense as he wants. Last year, he shot 36% from three with the Portland Trailblazers, averaged 19 points. At times, I did not love the offense. I did not love the defense. Maybe a new environment will be good for Anfernee Simons, a team that won a title a couple years ago. He gets to play with Derrick White, Jaylen Brown, Peyton Pritchard, and potentially Jason Tatum this year. Who knows? I don't know if that's going to affect Anfernee Simons' trade decision by the Celtics, if Tatum's going to return or not this year, but he could be a premier shooter on the block if the Celtics weren't even going to re-sign him in the offseason and they don't think they're going to make the playoffs or a deep run in 2026. And speaking of the Boston Celtics, now this season would have to go kind of horribly wrong for this guy to get traded. Derrick White. Derrick White is 31 years old. He'll be 32 not until July, so he's going to be 31 throughout this whole year. He's looked good in the preseason. Derrick White is going to be the number 2 scoring option most likely for the Boston Celtics. I do think he'll average more than Simons and Peyton Pritchard for this season. We know Jaylen Brown is the number 1, but we know that Derrick White could fit on any playoff team like a glove. He'll fit in seamlessly, and he can help you right away in his complementary role. He can rebound, pass, shoot, defend, run in transition. Derrick White can do it all. And I don't think Boston would trade Derrick White unless they got a Godfather offer. What if the Houston Rockets were like, let's give you the Fred VanVleet matching money, and you can have maybe a Brooklyn Nets unprotected first-round pick. You can have a Phoenix Suns unprotected first-round pick. Maybe Reed Shepherd's on the market. Who knows? There are plenty of teams out there that can offer a very good package for Derrick White, who is under control for the next 4 years. He's got guaranteed money from 2026 to 2028 for the team, and then he's got a $34 million player option for 2029. Boston may look at this and be like, we're going to shed a ton of money, we're going to get out of the bad years of Derrick White's contract, and we're going to get some really good assets and sell high on Derrick White, something Brad Stevens has done in the past with selling high on his guys, because you'd rather sell this guy off a year early than a year late. I think it's something to monitor this year. All right, let's go back to the Chicago Bulls now. I had him in my video last year. I can't believe he's still on this team. Nikola Vucevic. Nikola Vucevic is going to be 35 years old in a few days, and I think Bulls fans are ready for him to be off the roster. Now, if they were to move him, we're going to see a ton of Jalen Smith, ton of Zach Collins. But last year, Vucevic was good. He was so much better in 2025 than he was in 2024. He went from 29% from 3 in 24 to 40% from 3 in 2025. Now, I don't know if Chicago would have to give up an asset, but maybe there is a Vucevic for Jonathan Kuminga trade out there at some point this year as a floor spacing 5. Maybe Golden State having Al Horford and an old team already. They don't really want to do that. Could we see a Vucevic for RJ Barrett type trade if Chicago is looking for another wing? Charlotte could definitely use a big. Could we see Vucevic for Collin Sexton? There are some ideas out there. Maybe Vucevic for Malik Monk. Who knows? Maybe Vucevic for Anfernee Simons. There is matching contracts out there. I don't know if Vucevic will end up getting traded. If not, it's probably going to be what's going to happen with TJ McCollum if he doesn't get traded and he's going to get bought out. And I'm going to mention my third Chicago Bull. I feel like if I mention Coby White, I should also mention Ayo Dosunmu, who should cost less to opposing teams trying to trade for him than Coby White. He's 25 years old right now. He's going to be an unrestricted free agent this summer. Like Coby White, Chicago can offer Dosunmu more money than any other team. He's making $7.5 million right now. It's a super easy tradable contract. Dosunmu has also looked good in preseason. Now, last year, Dosunmu had maybe a down year as a shooter, shot 32% from 3, but he's 6'5", he can guard multiple positions, he plays very fast, and I think Chicago should definitely look to trade Ayo Dosunmu if he's having a very good first half to this year. He's had a great rise in the NBA after being a second rounder out of Illinois in the 2021 draft. And come on, Chicago, maybe trade Vucevic, maybe trade Dosunmu. You don't have to trade Coby White, you don't have to trade all 3 of them, but you should enter into a rebuild. Please do it for their fans. Now, I'm going through all the Lakers, right? I didn't talk about a Laker in this video. Who would be the most likely trade candidate? Do you want to talk about LeBron? Do you want to talk about Austin Reeves? No, I'm going to go with Rui Hachimura, who is also extension eligible right now. And maybe the Lakers are going to get something done, and I'm going to look like a fool. But Rui's playing on an $18 million expiring contract. Who knows what the Lakers want to do this year? LeBron James has sciatica. He's taking a patient approach. Maybe he comes back the mid to end November. They're in a tough Western Conference. They don't have any elite defenders on this team right now. Rui's probably the best they got if you don't think Marcus Smart can revert back to what he was in 2022. But Hachimura at 27 years old I think would have some value on the market. I think you could trade Hachimura for another expiring contract that could maybe help you and maybe be a cheaper guy that you can extend long term. Like, would the Kings be dumb enough to do Malik Monk and Keon Ellis for Rui Hachimura? Maybe if it wasn't to the Lakers, I just feel like they're never going to trade with each other because they haven't made a trade with each other since 1977. But yeah, Lakers fans, let me know who you think's the most likely trade candidate for you this year. Maybe it's Dalton Connect. One of the bigger names that we're going to talk about in this video, Lauri Markkanen of the Utah Jazz. Ace Bailey is here. There's so many guys in Utah that they need to get a good look with this year. They got 2 first-round picks this year, the 3 first-round picks from the 2023 draft, 2 first-round picks from the 2024 draft, plus Kyle Filipowski. And I think if Lauri Markkanen can carry that Euro basketball momentum into the NBA regular season, build up that trade value again, there would be a robust market for Markkanen. Could Detroit get involved? Could San Antonio get involved? Could Milwaukee get involved? I think there's plenty of teams that could look to take the next step and get Lauri Markkanen if he looks more like 2023 Markkanen rather than 2025 Markkanen. Now, the 2023 Jazz were somewhat competitive. That was kind of the last competitive team we've seen Markkanen on, but we've also never seen Lauri Markkanen play in a playoff game, which is kind of crazy. I don't know if that's going to scare some teams. He's also making massive money right now. He's owed $46 million this year, and then it will go up to $53 million in 2029. So you still have about 4 years, almost $200 million remaining on this contract. But I think if Utah can get out of it, they should this season. Yeah, they probably should have traded him in the 2024 offseason. Second and last player we're going to talk about, Miles Bridges of the Charlotte Hornets. I feel like we could be maybe entering the last year of Bridges in Charlotte. He's 27 years old. He averaged 20 points last year for the Hornets. He's had a good preseason so far. Teams are going to want some scoring if they can. Now, I do think Miles Bridges is a little bit of an empty stats guy. Another player that's never played in a playoff series before. But if this turns into a seller's market, teams could value him making $25 million this year. Then it descends to $22.8 million next year. Heck, Kyle Kuzma got traded last year. Miles Bridges is a better player, so maybe Milwaukee trades for him. And I always like to throw in like a hot take, a name you don't expect in these videos out of left field. I guess last year I should have had Luka Doncic, Anthony Davis, or De'Aaron Fox in that video. This year, I'm going to put in Pascal Siakam. Now, hear me out on this one. So the Indiana Pacers are not going to be getting Tyrese Haliburton back till the 2027 season. We know the Pacers do not like to go deep into the luxury tax. They have a big decision on Benedict Mathurin, who I easily could have thrown in this video, or an Obi Toppin or TJ McConnell, but I wanted to be spicy and put Spicy P in here because Siakam is 31 years old. He'll be 32 in April, and if they were wise, maybe they would trade Siakam at his highest value. I do think you can get a very nice return for Siakam and sprinkle those assets around Tyrese Haliburton. Either it's young, controllable players or it's draft capital. Siakam is owed $45.5 million this year, $48 million in 2027, and $52 million in 2028. Do you think he's going to age well on that contract? Do you think that you're going to be forced to give him maybe a $100 million extension in a couple years into his mid to late 30s? I'm not saying they will do this one. I'm saying this one is probably far-fetched, probably the most far-fetched guy here. But I do wonder if the Pacers would think about it, kind of like the Celtics before with Derrick White, if they got a Godfather offer. Pacers fans, let me know if I'm crazy for that one, or you can kind of see the vision. So that is going to be for me. Those were 20 NBA players that could get traded in the 2026 NBA season. We'll definitely update this list as the season goes along. I'm just happy that the NBA season is here. We're getting games that matter this week. And between the new presentation on NBC and Amazon, so many cool historic jerseys returning. We have Coach's Corner on ESPN, an incoming great draft class, elite talent at an all-time high, parity in each conference. I think we're in store for a special NBA season. So make sure you are subscribed because I'm going to have a big announcement on this channel very soon that I'm looking forward to. And I hope you guys did enjoy. Catch y'all on the next one. Peace.